So now what I want to do is take a very close look at some examples with you and show you a bunch of common issues that can pop up when you first attempt character animation. Let's take a look. Okay, we've pulled together some specific student examples for you just to talk about some kind of general issues that come up a lot with this evaluation exercise. So we're going to start with some that are good starts but need a little work, and we're going to talk about the different things that could be done to improve these, and we'll be talking to some degree about what you will be learning coming up. So remember, this is just an evaluation. So don't feel bad if your animation isn't quite there. That's why you're taking the course. So we'll be kind of talking about some issues and how you're going to learn to resolve those issues as you move through the course. All right, so let's dig in here. The first one we're going to look at, let's run this one quick. All right. Now, this one is notable for the very difficult task this animator chose, which was to animate a run or a walk. And for this early on in your progress, I would not expect you to be able to do something this complicated. Runs and walks are very, very difficult. Now, we will be doing runs and walks in this course. We'll be getting into that in the weeks ahead, so you'll learn all about how to do these correctly. As it is right now, this isn't a bad start, quite honestly, for someone who's never done it before. It's got some problems, but this is a really nice sense of getting ready and anticipation here, although really the anticipation is right here where the character rocks back a little bit. Now, that would actually be the movement you'd really want to emphasize here, is moving backwards before moving forwards. And then the beginning of the run almost starts to work, but the feet are kind of sliding along the ground. It doesn't really feel like the character has any weight or any volume. And we'll be talking about weight a lot in this course. Weight is a huge issue for character animators. We want to make sure that our audience believes in our characters and believes that our characters are really little guys, and that this little guy Squash is a little guy that you should be able to reach out and poke him in the tummy and tickle him. You should believe that he is real. Because if you don't believe he's real, you don't care what he's doing, and you don't care what's happening to him. So giving your animation a sense of weight, a sense of physics, so that we can feel that the character has volume and weight and is existing in a space with gravity, is one of the really important things that we need to do as character animators. Those very minor elements of making the audience believe in the gravity of the world your character lives in and the weight of your character will hugely advance the believability of your character, and your audience will be much more involved and much more connected with that character because of that. So one of the things that's not working about this walk, as you see as I drag across here, is the character doesn't seem to have any weight. He seems to be just sort of floating, and his legs are just moving. In fact, right here, both the legs are off the ground, and he's literally floating in the air. So we want to think about weight. It's going to be a topic we're going to talk about throughout the course, and it's an important one to think about. So kudos for trying something very difficult, and by the end of this course you will be able to animate this kind of a run much more effectively. So really, really good start there and a fun idea. All right, let's take a look at our next one here. Okay. All right. This is a really common attempt here, which is the jump. And lots of you guys tried doing a jump to get Squash out of the way. So this one has a very common problem that we see in a lot of beginning jumps. Now you will learn how to do a jump. It's going to be one of the very first things you learn in this course is how to do a very, very correct jump. So let's talk about this jump here and what's making it almost work, but not quite. It's getting there. This one is starting to move in the right direction. Now, one of the things I would like about this one is the little reaction here right at the beginning. We get that nice little reaction, and there's a little bit of a pause there where we get a chance to kind of feel the character looking and thinking. I would even recommend having the character look a little sooner and pausing even a little longer there so the audience really has a chance to see and feel what the character is thinking and feeling. And then as he begins to jump, we get this anticipation down, which is good. That's exactly right. Before you jump up, you have to anticipate the movement. In other words, do the opposite thing, which is to go down. And this is a necessity, a physical necessity, according to Newtonian physics. You can't simply stand and lift yourself up into the air. You have to first crouch down, and then you have to push yourself up in order to jump off the ground. And you can try it yourself. Stand up and try doing a jump. No matter what, you'll have to go down a little bit first. So this is very good. Anticipation down. Now here's where things start to not work so good. Now watch what happens with the feet here as he comes up off the ground. Notice that the feet simply lift off the ground with him. Now think about this for a minute. How is he doing that? And once again, if you get up out of your chair and try to do a jump yourself, you'll see that your feet don't just rise up off the ground with you. You push. You have to push your weight up in order to throw it up in the air, and then your feet will come behind and follow. But your feet have to stay on the ground, and they have to push up. They have to push up. So they will go straight, or straighter than this actually probably, but the legs going straight here is correct, but the feet need to stay on the ground first. We need to see the character pushing off the ground. Then the character can rise into the air. Otherwise, the character is literally just levitating. And again, we have no sense of weight, no sense of reality. We don't feel like this character exists in a real space with real gravity. And that's a very, very important task for a character animator, is to give that basic sense of believability. Okay, so as he flies up into the air here, I would add more ease to the top of this jump. Let this hang in the air a little bit longer before it comes down. And then as it comes down, we have a very similar situation to the pushing off the ground. We need something to catch the weight. And what's happening here is the leg is bent. It stretches out a little bit. This is good. This is good that the leg stretches out a little. But you would actually want to exaggerate that and have the leg stretch out quite a bit more. And then you would not want the leg to bend until the weight of the character follows. Because remember, the foot's going to touch down first, plant on the ground, and then the weight of the figure is going to come down on that leg, and then it's going to push the leg down. And we're going to get this little recoil here, which is happening, but this needs to be much more extreme because the weight of this character and the momentum coming down, we need to really feel that boom. We need to feel that weight really come down in order to believe that this character has real mass and volume. Nice little touch here with the arms. Little overlapping action with the arms. It's not entirely working, but it's the right idea. You definitely want arms to kind of swing and overlap. You want that overlapping action. In this case, it doesn't feel quite motivated yet by the movements and by gravity, but it's getting there. It's moving in the right direction. So this one's a good start, really a good start. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of others here. All right. All right, a really fun one here. Now this one's a little more successful. The timing is much better, and we get a much better sense of the performance of the character. And performance is our second biggest task. Maybe the first one is just physics and weight, making sure the character looks like it has weight and it's reacting to physics in an appropriate way. But the second and really the most important thing is the performance. Does that character seem alive? Does the character seem like it's thinking and feeling? The audience should be able to understand not only what's happening around the character, but what's happening inside the character's head. What is it thinking? What is it feeling? That's part of, again, what makes an audience engage with a character, but it's also extremely important for story clarity. If you want a character's actions to be clear, the audience needs to understand why the character is doing what they're doing. Why is that character suddenly kicking that other character? Well, because he's mad. How do we know that he's mad? What did he react to? How did he change? What is his body posture? What is his facial expression? All of those things need to communicate what's happening so that we are clear in the motivation of the character. So that's something that's really important. And in this piece here, there's a clunk right at the beginning here, right here, where I believe you just need to actually start rendering here. I would just start rendering right here and not bother with this first pose. Or you got to animate from this pose to this pose smoothly so it doesn't just pop. But once it goes to this pose, if we start it right here, we get the sense of the character looking around, and then we get this nice little take, which is nicely done again for a beginner. We get a little tiny little anticipation, and then just a spaz out. Really fun there. I like that you're playing around with the stretching a little bit. I would be a little cautious. I would say this is maybe going a little far until you're ready to really time it correctly, as you want to be very careful about pushing things this far out of proportion without having the timing be very, very precise. It's not that you can't do it, but you want to do it carefully so you don't lose the sense of reality of the character too much. All right, and the kind of classic scramble run here is really fun. And then this is a nice little stop here. Nice little overlapping action with the feet and the arms too. That's a nice little touch. I would actually have the whole pose maybe overshoot and come back a little bit. So he actually goes just a little farther than this and then comes back, because that'll give him a greater sense of momentum, once again a greater sense of weight, that he has to kind of stop himself and kind of pull his weight back in order to stop himself moving. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a really nice little performance for the character there. The crazy run here is sort of fun. I think once again the arms are a little overly exaggerated. We're kind of losing in the spaz out and through here. We're kind of losing a sense of the solidity of the character with all that extreme squash and stretch and stretching around. And I think even with a scramble run, a little more of a sense of weight with the character would be good, because the character once again feels pretty weightless through here. And I know that's part of the gag, but you could still have this gag and still have him feel a little weightier by finessing his cog position over his feet a little bit more and getting him to kind of crush down a little more as the weight comes down and so forth. But a nice, really good start there for this one. Okay, here's another example here. Okay, also a nice example, some nice things happening. Now, the reaction at the beginning here, it's sort of working, but there's kind of a lot of things going on all at once and a lot of different limbs moving at different times. Now, on the one hand, that's can be a good thing. You don't want everything moving all at once, and you definitely want to create some offset and some overlap in your motion in order to make it feel natural and not too robotic. But one of the things that's happening here is that we're kind of getting lost in terms of what we should be looking at. Am I looking at the foot raising? Am I looking at the arms moving? Am I looking at what's happening with the eyes? It's kind of muddied, and I don't really get a clear sense of what he's reacting to. There's also a weight issue here as well, and as I said, we're going to be talking about weight a lot. You'll notice the way he's standing on his foot, he would probably fall forward here. He probably couldn't support his weight this far back. You'd really want to lean him back, pull him back on the cog so that his center of gravity is more centered over the foot itself. So you'd want to lean him back just a little bit in order to make him feel a little more balanced. That would be really important there. Now, this is really fun, this stretchy step. It gets a little wonky because the feet are slipping. See that, how that back foot starts to slide. And once again, suddenly he stops being a real guy with weight. And suddenly he starts just being artwork moving around the screen. And we don't want that. We want him to feel like a real guy who has weight, and a real guy, his feet wouldn't just slip and slide along the ground like this. Even if he was on ice, it wouldn't slip and slide like this. It would slip and slide, but it would be, you would feel his weight. Okay, so we want to sticking the feet down so the feet stay stuck to the ground unless they're lifted off the ground or clearly motivated to slide. And I'm not saying you can't slide feet ever, but it has to be clearly motivated. Aside from that feet slipping, the other thing that you'd want to do is, again, like the other one, perhaps overshoot here a little bit and have his momentum carry him forward a little and then back. And once again, we have a weight problem here because you can see his weight is really too far back here. Again, he would fall, and he's not really moving fast enough here to warrant that. You see he's moving pretty slow. He would fall over here. So once again, you need to get that body forward so the center of gravity is more centered over the foot that's taking the weight. Super, super important. All right, fun. A nice, good start for this one as well. Okay, next up, we have this one. Okay, another attempt at a jump here. So let's take a look at this one. There's some nice things here. I like the foot tapping. That's really fun. Now, in this case, we don't really have time again to see this reaction. This reaction happens too quickly. He looks and then he jumps. You need to give your audience time to read what's happening with your character. So you have to provide beats, little moments, little breaths. And they can be very short, but you need to give your audience time to see, maybe do this little take, and then maybe go back to something a little bit like this, maybe not so squash and stretch. So you never want to hold on a squash and a stretch. No, I shouldn't say never, but you almost never want to hold on a squash and stretch. You want to move through it and snap him back into his normal proportions as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the character will lose solidity. So you could come back to a more neutral posture, but still have him looking up. And then wait and let your audience go, oh, he's looking at something. He's surprised, and he's surprised about something coming down. The way it is now, we see the surprise, but we don't have time to really understand what the surprise is. So I would have him maybe tap tap a little faster, look immediately up, react a little quicker, and then just add a few frames of hold before he hops out of frame there. And I guess you could add a little time to the beginning. I'd maybe add a little time to the beginning and just give him a little more time to react. Now this jump, once again, has the same problem the other one has. It has the anticipation, which is great. there's some weird things happening with the feet here. We'll learn in future lessons how to clean up those feet movement a little bit. But again, the big issue here with the jump is he just begins to levitate. He crouches down, but then how does he get in the air? How does he get up there? He doesn't push. We have to see him push. That's the most important thing with getting that jump to look right. You actually want a pose like this, but back down on the ground with the feet still on the ground so our audience can see him pushing. We have to include that specific pose in order to make these jumps work. The timing of this jump is a little bit better. He's got a nicer hang in the air here, which is really good. You could probably increase that even more. And I like the way the feet come through, and there's some nice little overlap and follow through on the feet there that's really nice. You can see that there, how the feet come down heel first and then the little toes overlap. There's also some nice overlap and follow through with the squash and stretch. It's not quite, it's almost working. Yeah, it's working pretty good. That's working pretty well. I'd maybe increase the stretch here just a little bit. And the timing isn't quite perfect. But again, we need to stretch the legs out to catch the weight. And we're again losing an opportunity to feel the weight, this one in particular, because the knees are bent before he touches the ground. So we don't feel the weight pushing him. Get the knees straight out from under him, because he's trying to stop himself from falling into a heap. So get those legs stretched out so he can catch the weight, and then don't bend the knees at all until the heel hits the ground and the body begins to squish down on the knees. Then the knees can begin to bend and he can come back to rest. I also love the little gesture here at the end, little phew gesture, but it happens again a little too quickly. It's pretty good, but I would give him a minute. I would let him recover first and then pause just a beat, just maybe half a second or a quarter of a second only, and then do the little gesture. It's going to read much more clearly. Again, we need to give our audience time to understand what our character is doing and thinking and feeling. One of the things that's really important to remember about character animation is that it takes so long to do. You guys have probably already realized how difficult this process is. And so you as the animator are intimately acquainted with what is happening in your animation. Remember that your audience is not. It gives you a kind of false sense of the clarity of your animation. It's really important to put yourself in the boots of someone who's never seen your animation before. You're going to work on your animation for days or weeks or even months. It's going to go by in a flash for your audience, and you have to respect that, and you have to work with that in mind and give them time. Give them time to understand each part of your story. And that brings up another really important point, which is that an audience can only absorb one piece of information at a time. So don't try to show them 3 different things all at once. Show them one piece of information, then the next piece of information, then the next piece of information. And for example, right here, he's recovering from his jump. That is the piece of information we should be communicating, recovering from his jump. The little phew, I'm done, I'm relieved, that is showing, hey, I'm relieved. That's another piece of information, a second piece. So you have to separate those. He's recovering from his jump, one piece of information. He's relieved, second piece of information. Make sure you give your audience time to absorb each and every individual piece of information when you're trying to tell even a very, very simple story. Okay, moving on. All right. Really fun original idea here. Love that he doesn't even notice the squash. Really fun storytelling there. And I like his reaction to the little object on the ground, but it's a little too small. If you notice, he looks with his eyes and he leans just a little bit. But I would do this maybe even a little bit more. I would maybe exaggerate this just a little bit more. And this is a good piece of general advice here, which is that with a unibody character, you want to pose more extremely with the unibody, so that when a character is looking, he's not just looking with his eyes, he's looking literally with his whole body. And this is a good start, but I would make this even more extreme and really lean him forward and really make sure that the audience's attention is clearly where that little object is. And the little shine, well, I guess must be a coin. I thought it was a seed or something. It must be a coin. But that little shine helps, but you actually would maybe not even need that shine with a stronger pose here. Oh, and the other thing is, I would maybe have him look first and then shine, because your audience's eye is going to be on the character while it's moving. So if he looks, then the audience will start to move in the direction he's looking, and then if you add the little shine, you kind of create a clear sequence. And it's again about that giving one piece of information at a time. He's looking at the coin shines, okay? And that brings your audience's eye to that point. So very nice. I would maybe also give this maybe a little bit longer. Have him wait here. Have him look and then stop. Again, stop and wait and let the audience catch up and say, oh, he's looking at that coin on the ground. What's he going to do? Then you can have him start to walk. Now, this walk could really use an anticipation. He just starts forward. I would have him lean back a little. Even with a very gentle, simple walk, there's going to be an anticipation. You're going to rock back a little before you move forward. Also, the feet are once again sliding on the ground. That's a common occurrence with beginning animators. We are going to learn all about how to make sure the feet stay stuck to the ground and we keep that illusion of weight and gravity. We're going to be talking about that throughout the course, so you're going to learn all about that. Once again, we have a weight issue here. The character is way too far forward on the foot and would probably fall down. And as he walks, there's a little more of a sense of weight with this kind of rocking back and forth, which is nice, but he still feels relatively weightless. And we're going to learn in this course how to always give your character a good, strong sense of weight and balance. Very, very important to all character animation to give us that strong illusion. Overall, really nice job though, and really cleanly animated. Okay. Next up, another big long step. This one's working a little bit better, I think. And we get more of a chance to see the reaction because the character kind of, even as the foot is moving, kind of stays in that pose looking up, which I think works really nicely. Now, we've still got some issues here. Right here, the character's weight is indeterminate there, but it's moving in the right direction, and I love the overlap and follow through. The little stagger there at the end is really nice. And notice how it really helps to sell the momentum and therefore the weight of the character, that little overlap and follow through there. Really fun, a very nice little piece moving in the right direction here. Okay. All right, another jump attempt. And this one is getting closer. But once again, the character just literally rises off the ground without pushing. We still have that same issue. I like how it tucks up here. The feet tuck up. That's really fun. And then here, they've got the right idea again of pushing the leg out. And this is working a little better. The leg comes out and then crushes when the weight comes down. And if you can see, this landing does work better than the other landings. It's a little bit rough, but there's more of a sense of weight. So critical. Now you need that on the way up and on the way down. You need to feel the weight being lifted up, and then you need to feel the weight crushing down on those legs at the end in order to really make it feel realistic. Okay, now we have some a little bit nicer examples. The rest of these are ones that are coming together, maybe a little bit stronger. So let's look at these. They all still can use some work though, so let's take a look at some of these here. All right, really nice. Now this one is almost there with the jump. It's really close. Nice anticipation, a nice extreme anticipation too. I would maybe pull the cog forward a little bit to drop the knees just a little. And then there's the beginning of the push. It's starting to happen, but you gotta exaggerate it more. We need to see the legs go all the way straight and really push him up off the ground to really get that to work, but it's moving in the right direction, and the overlap on the feet is really nicely done. That has a really nice feeling to it there as he kind of flips himself around. And then I love the surprise that he doesn't catch himself. Really fun, and a nice sense of weight here as he squashes, and then the momentum carries him forward in that little slide. Nice slow ease in and there on the slide. So that timing is giving us a really nice sense of weight there right at the end. Boom, nice. Really moving in the right direction here. Now that jump still could use some work, but it's heading absolutely in the right direction. Nice one there. Okay. Next one up. All right, really fun. This one's great fun. Let's watch that one again. All right, great. Some really nice, crazy movement here. Wonderful use of squash and stretch. There's a lot of really nice, strong squash and stretch use here. The stretch as he comes up, squash as he recoils, squashing again as he pushes against the wall, and then stretching out as he pushes. And this is actually happening sideways here, but this is actually the best jump we've seen. Okay, watch. He pushes. See that? How we can really see him pushing off. And then also, in terms of landing the jump, again, look, the feet come out straight, and then they bend. Or at least this one bends, as the weight comes down. Squish, and we feel that weight drop. So critical. So this one's working much better. Now the feet are slipping around too much. You want to get the feet to lock into the ground. And some of these poses are getting a little beyond what's comfortable for the character and the rig to do. And you want to be a little careful about that. You want to respect your rig and work within the limitations of the rig. Doesn't mean you shouldn't push it and push your poses. You want to try to make your poses as extreme as possible generally. But you don't want to go so far that the pose looks unattractive or unnatural. So you want to be a little bit careful with that. This little movement on the hand too, that seems to me to be kind of extra. It doesn't really read to me. If it's meant to be intentional, I don't really understand what it is or its motivation, and it's very hard to see. So I would either take that out or make it bigger or make it more clear and motivated. But a very fun example here. A lot of nice stuff happening. Okay, next up. All right, another really nice example with a strong performance that where we can once again kind of feel him reacting and thinking. Very good. Okay, now a couple things here. The beginning here is working nice. Some of these poses could really be exaggerated though, particularly this little kind of tiny anticipation. And it's a little bit awkward that it's moving sort of down into this pose, and then the squash and stretch happens very slowly looking up. And it's almost like the body is moving independently of the legs and the limbs. You generally want to kind of move crisply from one pose to another. And as I said before, you don't want to move slowly or hold for very long with squashed and stretched poses. You want to kind of move through them quickly, generally as you move from one motion to another, and then you want to kind of snap back into the standard proportion of the character. But you also want to look at exaggerating poses a little bit more. This little anticipation could probably be exaggerated. This one's nice here. That's a nice exaggerated pose there. And here we have a much, much better jump. Now the foot shouldn't leave the ground. If you kept that foot down on the ground, this jump would really work great because you definitely are pushing here. But you just don't want that foot to leave the ground first. Okay, and the legs are a little bit crazy. I'd maybe clean those up a little. But here also the legs are much more correct. Legs stay stretched, and then now the weight comes down. In fact, that's perfect. That's perfect right there. Boom. You can see how that gives us, boom, that sense of weight. And then I like the counter reaction when that falls again. That's nice. All right, very, very well done. This one's moving in the right direction. Want to get these feet locked down, though. The feet are still sliding around quite a bit. Locking those feet down will also really help with your illusion of gravity. Okay, very nice. All right, another example here. Oops. All right. All right, again, this one's coming pretty close. A nice little reaction. It's not a real clear pose, though. This is a good example of how it's not really enough just to look with the eyes. You really, especially with a unibody character, but I would argue with any character, you want to look with the whole body. So he should lean back, really look those eyes up, make this much more extreme right here, and then wait. Give our audiences a little more time. And then this is a good anticipation here. I'd maybe keep this foot locked down. And we got another problem here, which is he's stepping this foot back, but he's actually only on the heel. This, again, for weight doesn't make sense. You'd be out of balance and you'd fall over. On all of your major poses, there should be a clear sense of where the weight is, where it's being supported, or where it's going. And this is indeterminate. Our weight is really indeterminate. So you'd probably want to keep this foot flat on the ground and keep the weight forward, then push the back leg out to take the weight, and then shift the weight over once the foot is in place. So you get the foot in place first, then shift the weight. Okay? But this is right. Oh my goodness, there it is. This is what we've been looking for all the way along with all of these jumps. Foot flat on the ground, pushing off. This is the pose that every jump must have in order to clearly communicate the weight. Now I would argue you could go up a little higher, you could hang in the air a little longer, and then here you want to make sure that that leg is straight and doesn't bend before the weight comes down. So the landing is not as good. As you can see there, we don't get a sense of weight. He just seems to just sort of float down. And the feet also need to lock to the ground there. But this jump, that's the first real proper push-off jump we've seen. So that's working much, much better. Just needs some work on the landing there. And again, nice overlapping action there at the end. That's working really well too. Okay, last but certainly not least, all right, great. Really, really nice performance here. We really get a sense of the consciousness of the character. Very smart idea to just start him already looking up. It's a really smart choice. Don't even take the time to have him look up. And if you do, you need to add more time. In a lot of the other examples we looked at, we need more time with him looking up. So add a little more time to the beginning. Let him look up and let it pause for a second. Now, this step backwards is also very nicely done. We have a nice sense of weight here. The weight is distributed carefully over the foot that's holding the weight. See that? And then he doesn't shift the weight until this foot is in position, and then the weight shifts back. That's very nicely done, very sophisticated, and you can see that it makes the character feel more real, like he's living in a real world and could be touched and could be pushed over if need be. That makes your audience engage with that character so much more. There's also time for us to understand his moves and reactions. It's timed very, very well. I think my only real quibble with this is I think this pose is a little awkward. I can tell you broke the rig to get this to happen. Now you can actually create a rig that would allow you to put the hands behind the back, but we don't have that with this character, and I would again recommend you want to be a little more respectful of what the rig can do. You could probably get something very similar with a different pose, a similar feeling, a similar tone. But even if you did do this, if you still wanted to put this behind the back, I would get it out from under him because it looks like he's playing with his naughty bits here. So what I would do is I would move the shoulder way back. I would also get the arms out away from the body just to make it a stronger pose. So I get the shoulder way back, and I'd get the elbows out in back like this, and then maybe tuck just the hand back behind. And I think that would read much more clearly as hands behind the back, because I can see that's the intention here, is he's got his hands behind his back, but it doesn't really read. It feels very, very strange. But overall, the timing and performance and weight communication of this one is very, very strong, moving in a really, really good direction. Okay, hope that's helped you guys with some common problems we see with these first evaluation exercises. But never fear, don't worry if you struggled with this. You are here to learn. That's what you're here for. And the upcoming lessons are going to solve so many of your problems and answer so many of your questions. The first real exercise in the course is the pose off. You can be a great animator, but if your poses suck, your animation's gonna suck. We wanted you to practice using the rigs to mimic existing poses and to also practice creating your own poses. Let's take a look at some of the student work, and then I'll talk more about how to think about and approach posing.